It's the Criterion. It's the Criterion. Criterion. N. Project.
Hello, everybody. That music you just heard by the great Mike Lorette means it's time for a new episode of the Criterion Project. I am Conrado Falco, and I'm here as always with the great Rachel Wagner.
Hi!
Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year.
Yes, happy New Year. New decade.
The new decade. That's
Yeah.
exactly.
It's pretty
correct.
exciting. We're going to have 2020 vision all year long.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. So this episode, we're talking about the movie called The Housemaid from 1960. And it's a little bit, it was my pick this time around. And I decided to honor the movie Parasite, which Oscar nominations are coming out on Monday as we record this. Maybe they have already come out by the time you're hearing this, but Parasite by director Bong Joon-ho is very likely going to be the first South Korean movie nominated for any Oscar, including Best Picture. So that's very exciting. And so I decided that we should take a look at this movie, The Housemaid, which is a very influential South Korean classic, which apparently also influenced Bong Joon-ho in the making of Parasite and in his career in general.
Yeah, and I think that Parasite, not to do a mini review, but I just think it's a pretty amazing film because not only is it a Korean film that has gotten a lot of play for, foreign film, but everybody I know likes this movie. Like, people on film Twitter that are, a little bit film snobby, they like it. My friends that see, 5 movies a year that I've dragged to it, they like it. Like, it just seems like it's actually like a super crowd pleaser wrapped in an art house package.
Absolutely. And it does feel, you're absolutely correct, like like a once in a lifetime sort of thing. Like,
yeah,
I would have never guessed that a South Korean movie would like become like the toast of the town for like the highest of highbrow critics and the common popcorn moviegoers. Like,
yeah.
it's being nominated for awards all over the place. It's doing really well at the box office, and most importantly, I agree with you. Everyone I know who has seen the movie has liked it. Most of them have loved it because it's just so entertaining and exciting and unpredictable.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening to this and haven't seen it yet, you should definitely go see it. It's I think if you're gonna see one movie from 2019 this year, I think it should be Parasite. It just feels like the movie of the moment in a way.
I agree. It was my number 2 of the whole year in my top 15 favorite movies of the year.
I think it was my number 2 as well. So I think we are on the same page. About that.
But so it's gonna be interesting to talk about this movie. That there's definite obvious places where it influenced. You can see the influence, so I'm excited to talk about it. But let us know what you think about Parasite in the comments.
Yeah, totally. Before we get into The Housemaid, let's talk about the Criterion channel. Is there anything in there that you've been seeing or that spikes your interest and you want to highlight?
Yeah, so actually I haven't, because I've been having all of these problems with my Criterion channel app, with it buffering a lot, and I'm not able to watch. I actually ended up renting this movie on Amazon because I was having so many problems. Yeah, which is frustrating when you're paying for it. But I have to say that I let them know. I put in a technical support question or whatever, and they sent me back an email with like a million different fail-safes, and so I haven't had a chance to because this was just yesterday that I got the email, so I haven't had a chance to go through them all yet, and try to figure out if it's because it was like all the other, like Disney Plus is working fine, Amazon is working fine, so I don't know what the problem is. but anyway, I'm going to go through that whole thing. But I thought it was impressive that it seemed like it was actually written by a human, and it was a real response, and they seemed genuinely, to show good customer service. Which I was like, okay, that makes me feel a little better, because I was about to come on this and rant and be like, this is terrible. This is a waste of money. But I'm feeling more hopeful about my Criterion Channel membership. And so I'm going to do all those things and then get back to them, and hopefully everything will work out. But I'm having a ton of problems with the app buffering for me
that's
when I try to watch
interesting.
something.
What are you using? The Apple TV app or?
No, I have on just my Windows. I just have an app.
Oh, okay.
The download, just the website is what I'm using. I
guess.
The
website. Okay.
Yeah.
What browser are you using? Because I also had problems using Safari. I guess you wouldn't have.
Oh yeah, because it was Chrome I was using.
Oh,
so maybe
okay.
I should try using Firefox or something. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway.
I had trouble with one browser, and it seemed to go away when I used a different one. But I will also say that I had a similar experience to you. I had this problem with the subtitles, and the Criterion customer service were really responsive, and they provided a bunch of solutions. So I agree with you that even though the app has had a couple glitches with me, they have been really helpful. So there's that.
So I have not watched anything new in the last 2 weeks because I've just been in post-Christmas recovery mode.
Yeah, that's right. Rachel has come back to life after watching 1,000 Christmas movies in a row.
Yeah. But have you been able to see anything?
You know what? I have also had a pretty crazy beginning of the year, and I haven't seen that many things, even though there are a lot of things on the Criterion Channel that look very cool that I do want to see. Just looking at the sort of my list section where you can put movies that you want to watch, there's a lot of stuff here. I don't know when I'm going to find the time to watch all of this, but I am really excited that it's there, and a lot of new movies that just got on the channel this month. There is Desperately Seeking Susan, starring Madonna, which I've never seen, but I've always wanted to. That's on the channel. There is a lot of Jane Campion movies, whom I really like The Piano and Holy Smoke and other stuff. There's Three Faces by Jafar Panahi, which came out last year and I didn't catch. Similar, Black Mothers, a documentary about Jamaica that I also heard very great things about from last year. So all of that stuff is up there, and I'm really excited to dig in whenever I have the chance.
Yeah. I'm excited to dive into the Saturday Matinees section. There's a lot of really great movies. I love 12 Angry Men. Oliver's on there, Murder on the Orient Express, the good one, not the boring one. The Black Stallion is one of the best. I absolutely love that movie. There's an animation celebration and short films. That sounds interesting. And Hard Day's Night is on there. Anyway, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, there seems to be also a Jungle Book from the 1940s that looks interesting that I didn't know about. There's some Charlie Chaplin movies. There is the first Abbas Kiarostami movie from the 80s is on there. So it's kind of like the family-friendly section, right?
Yeah.
The Saturday Matinees. And you have I think that's a really cool idea that you can have these, movies that are, I guess an introduction to the art house could be potentially for children or younger people. And families.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. That looks like it's curated for me.
Great.
I will like.
Amazing. So. Okay. So let's get into it. We're talking about The Housemaid from 1960, directed by Kim Ki-young, South Korean film. Rachel, would you like to give us a little bit of a description of what the hell happens in this movie?
Yeah. So this movie is pretty bonkers. It's pretty nuts. It's about this this couple, and the wife is pregnant, and it starts out the movie. They hear about they read about somebody who has fallen in love with, had an affair with the maid, and it's caused all these problems. Well, it then their story starts. It's kind of like, how could they've let that happen? And then their story starts, and they end up hiring a maid to help with the pregnant wife, and she's insane, this housemaid. And she seduces the husband of the couple, and then everything, and then she basically becomes this crazy stalker lady and won't let them leave their house, and is threatening to kill them, and there's all this rat poison, and it's a horror movie. But it's, when I was watching this, because usually I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what, I mean, you can be very unpredictable, but I feel like I usually can be like, oh, this is not going to be his thing. No, he's going to really like this. But with this one, I have no idea what you'll think about this movie. I just have no idea. So I'm very curious for what your thoughts.
Great. I think you're doing a pretty good job of describing a movie that is like pretty crazy, like you say.
Yeah.
And you didn't even touch on like some of the guy's students at the piano lessons, and there's this whole thing of the setup and the kids in the household. Like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I think we're probably in similar situations. I think it is. I think it's definitely, if you've seen a number of Bong Joon-ho movies, you will see how this movie has kind of influenced his style and his kind of movies, and also other South Korean filmmakers. I feel like I see a lot of this movie in the work of Park Chan-wook, who did not The Housemaid, that's what we're talking about. He did oh my god, what's the name of the movie that came out not so long ago? The Handmaiden. The Handmaid.
Oh, right, yeah. And there is a
2016.
remake of this movie that evidently is quite good.
Im Sang-soo did a remake of this movie. And also, very interestingly, Kim Ki-young, who directed this movie, apparently remade it 2 more times in a movie called Woman of Fire and Woman of Fire 82.
Oh.
He kind of like did variations on the same story of the maid coming into a household and like wreaking havoc. So it's interesting.
Yeah, because I think the remake with the same name, at least, is 2011, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is a movie that I feel like you could have a lot of groan-worthy analysis. Like, if people take it too seriously, and be like, oh, it's not portraying women well, or I don't know, like, just I feel like it's not a movie meant to be taken like super seriously. I feel like a lot of it's kind of meant to be sort of over the top and just have fun with it.
Yeah. So I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm gonna go on a bit of a theory.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how you feel about South Korean, like certain type of South Korean movie. I feel like Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, and some of these guys, they have this thing, especially Bong, of kind of switching genres and being kind of like back and forth, so that you don't really know if you're supposed to be horrified or laugh, or you know what I mean, what things that happen. I feel like that's definitely present in certain moments in Parasite, certain violent scenes that are also kind of like a little funny in some ways, and the opposite, right? Like funny scenes that suddenly become violent in a very disturbing way, and things like that. And I think
I'm not going to pretend to be any kind of expert on South Korean, but I know just from my friends who I have a whole group of friends that are super into K-pop and to Korean television. And I know that a lot of that is very melodramatic and very soapy. And I actually really enjoy that when it's done well. I think it's really fun. But But yeah, I think that is a part of that whole culture, something that they really enjoy, sort of the melodrama of it all.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember who it was that I was reading an article about the housemaid last night, and they were talking. It was a Korean writer, and they were talking about the melodrama of it all and how it was a very popular genre in Korea at the time. And this movie, I feel like, is very melodramatic in the
Mm-hmm.
way that all these women kind of want to seduce this man, and then like there's like poisoning and like blackmailing and things like that going on. um but it's also done it in a very well, first of all, in a kind of like a twisted way, bringing in like the horror and the thriller elements, and also in a bit of a playful way, especially at the end with a very, I don't know how you felt about it, but like in my opinion, completely out of unexpected, out of left field, very jokey ending, I thought. um,
Mm-hmm.
at the very end, when I guess we can spoil it a little bit, when it's kind of revealed that it has been kind of like a fantasy, and it's
Yeah.
like a cautionary tale, right? And the guy, the father of the household, just turns directly to the camera and says like, "Hey fellas, this could happen to anyone, so be careful," which I thought was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I liked it.
Mhm. So it's like you say, it's a totally uh, unexpected, bonkers movie that just goes in these places that you're not expecting.
Yeah. Well, and you think about it, so this came out the same year as Psycho.
Hmm.
And so you can kind of see some of those Hitchcockian elements. Uh, you can see that era of filmmaking. I feel like in a lot of the of course it's black and white, but the whole scene particularly felt Hitchcockian to me. The whole scene where the crazy woman is on the patio outside and
Mm.
looking in on what's happening on the um with the piano student in the through the glass. And um I uh I think yeah, there was just a number of things that felt very kind of closed in, kind of similar to something like Rear Window, something like Rope, kind of a thing of that era of
Hmm.
thrillers.
Yeah, I think those scenes that you're talking about, where we kind of see the second floor of the house through the outside windows, and how
Mm-hmm.
the characters go from one room to another, and how they're spying on each other, like how the
Mm-hmm.
housemaid kind of like stands in the balcony and kind of like hears as the father is giving piano lessons to this girl who got the housemaid her job, but is also in love with the music teacher, and one, so the housemaid is feeling all this jealousy that she wants to be a part of, and I think those scenes are really well done and like really
Mm-hmm.
suspenseful, and they look really great. Like the idea
Yeah.
of having being able to see everything through the windows is really really cool, and in a really, I thought, very inventive way of being able to
Yeah.
see where everyone is in the house at
I
particular
I
moment.
agree. Also, I just liked the fact that it kind of did remind me a little bit of Psycho, the way that the stairs are always kind of like this ever present threat. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like they're always kind of there, like someone's gonna fall down the stairs.
Yeah, definitely. The stairs and the rat poison, obviously.
Yeah,
Which I think it's one of the very first scenes in which they're moving into this bigger house, and they find a rat, and the dad is like, "Okay, kids, this is rat poison. Don't eat it." And I'm like, "Oh no, this rat poison's gonna come back, 100%."
yeah.
Um, yeah, and actually, it's funny that you mentioned the stairs, because I want to highlight, there is um, a supplementary video on the Criterion channel for this movie, in which Bong Joon-ho talks for like 15 minutes about this movie and what he loves about it. And he talks a lot about the very interesting context for how the movie was made, and what it meant to Korean cinema. And
Mm-hmm.
he talks about how at this time, which is 1960, is not that long after the Korean War, so it's been a lot of the country's just starting to redevelop and recover from the war, and apparently having a two-floor house, or a two-story house, was a very big deal. So having stairs in
Oh,
the house was a symbol of a certain kind
interesting.
of upper middle class thing. So those stairs, that's why the stairs are so important, right? It was like, it was representative of the kind of household that this was. And I think it's very interesting that the director is deciding to turn those stairs into such a violent tool, right? Like this thing that the family is aspiring to, but also that they can't achieve because of the people that they choose to bring into their house, I guess.
Mm-hmm. See, that's interesting because I was a little bit confused about the whole thing with his job, like because they would talk about the factory, everything, and so I was a little confused about that.
So when it starts, this women at a factory, they apparently, I guess this just must be some sort of like cultural thing in which like the factory has these clubs. So after when they're done working, apparently they have these extracurricular activities that they can choose to participate in. And these girls have a music club in which the guy is the music teacher of the club. Right? That's how I understood it.
Oh, okay.
Even though it was a little unclear to me. I suppose that's what's going on, and his job is just, I don't know, I guess it's like the South Korean equivalent of like, you know, when Google has like a ping pong table or something nowadays.
So yeah, and so she's sewing. So she's doing that as like a side hustle or something, or?
The mother?
Yeah, the mother.
Yeah, I think so. I think she, actually, yes, Bong does talk about that too in the video. He says that she's kind of a representative of the perfect housewife, which in that context means someone who is taking care of the children in the house, but is also able to make some money at the same time by doing the sewing. So I think that's another, I think it's supposed to be this very like, very like idealistic in some ways picture of the South Korean family at this point in time, and how that is kind of like disrupted by the affairs and this, you know, like all this sexual energy that comes into the house.
And she was just, I think it was a good cast. They did a good job with casting, because you definitely felt the wife felt like a wife, and the housemaid was like, I don't know, just well cast as this crazy person. Like they were so different in their appearance and their demeanor and just everything about them, even the way they were dressed. Everything was very different. I think you had a real contrast between the two women.
Totally. The housemaid very often has her hair down, which I feel like the other women in the movie rarely do. And she also has she's very skinny, and she has these like cat eyes, and you know, she looks like a bit of like a panther or something that's going to could attack at any moment, right? And she's wearing black a lot. So yeah, I definitely agree with you that and yeah, I don't know, I feel like if you take I feel like I like that the movie at the end reveals itself to be kind of like a metaphor, because I feel like it works much better as that than as an actual psychological reality, right? It feels like it's interested in all these psychological things like desire and you know, betrayal and family love versus like, you know, romantic or like sexual love and things like that. But if you start to wonder why these characters are acting the way they're acting, maybe that's not the way to go about it. What would you say?
It's just a fun movie. It's not one to I don't know, like it's I at least didn't see like tons of social commentary or things like that. Like it's more of it's just a fun, silly movie. It's kind of how I saw it more.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know, I started to wonder at some points, like there's surely something can be done about this woman in this house, right? Like there's points in which she says like, I'm going to tell to the factory that you did this to me or whatever, and their husband's gonna lose the job. I don't know. I was just wondering, like, this woman is so weird and suspicious from the beginning that when she gets to the house, that I was like a little bit, I don't know. I was happy to accept it as a sort of like, you know, thriller, like B movie sort of fun thriller, and I think at that it is very enjoyable and succeed.
Same with me. To me, the tipping point is when she kills the little boy. That was so like I don't know, that it was to me was just so over the top, and like you'd have
Right.
like
When
to
she
kill
comes
this
into
like
the
innocent, sweet little boy.
yeah.
Like,
Well, the boy was really, really mean to her from the beginning, and he was very annoying. I have to say, he was constantly like trying to mess with her, and like kept like knocking on her bedroom door for no reason and things like that.
I
But
guess,
yeah,
but I
but
don't know. It's
definitely
just
does
like
not
a
deserve to be pushed down the stairs.
yeah, like a little child is to me that was just like, okay, we're in full on this is melodrama. This is
Yeah.
yeah, no.
Yeah, not just that, but definitely even more so. I feel for me the reaction to it, right? Like
Yeah.
right after the kid dies, and everyone is like, okay, but we won't do anything about this because it's better if we don't mention this at all.
Yeah.
Um, which was,
What?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's like some cultural context that I'm missing, but I am willing to give it, forgive all of that just because it's so fun and unexpected. I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean that you're not gonna like go outside and like get help or like
Yeah, like what are you gonna tell everyone that how did your kid like suddenly die who was perfectly healthy?
yeah. But she's got them under house arrest evidently. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
silly, but it's fun. I like a good
it's very fun.
scary movie, so I'm on
Um,
board.
yeah, I will say one last thing before we move on to our questions, which is talking about the sort of you were saying the social commentary or political commentary. Based on what I read and what I heard in that interview with Bong Joon-ho about the movie, it seems to me like the most social elements of the movie are maybe the context in which it was made and released.
Mm,
It's 1960 is when it got released, and the very next year there was a military coup in South Korea and the military dictatorship that lasted from 1961 to 1979. So it was a long time of military dictatorship that apparently was very rigorous in the way it wanted to sort of determine people's lives. Apparently, according to Bong in the interview, he says that like uh, they regulated how long women's skirts could be, and they regulated how long men's hair could be. They had like cut your hair a certain length and things like that. So very specific about the way society should look. And this movie, and some of other of Kim Ki Young's other movies were a bit of a challenge to that, right? Because
yeah.
there's so much craziness and
There's some
wild
mature content in this.
mature content,
Yeah.
and definitely like unexpected violence and maybe not very wholesome, right, in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
which apparently was very significant at this time in comparison to what was the mainstream in South
Mhm.
Korea. And it's the reason why in the late, apparently during the dictatorship, these movies were very popular because they were like a challenge. And then when after the dictatorship went away and more American movies and like international media came to Korea, these movies sort of like didn't feel as special anymore. And then in the 90s, people of Bong's generation, the young filmmakers, kind of rediscovered them, right? And that's when this director and his movies kind of like regained popularity. And then The Housemaid was restored later in 2008 by the Korean Film Archive and
Mm.
the World Cinema Foundation by Martin Scorsese's family.
Mhm. My I,
Yeah.
I I do also want to say I think the scariest, just as far as tension scene, in my opinion, is when the crazy lady is holding the baby. I,
Mm,
that scene I thought was very good. I was like, oh, she's gonna kill this baby.
yeah. And that's another moment when you're like, you can't leave this woman in this house. Like you have to do something about this. You can't just like continue.
That was really
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, it's a fun movie. I mean, it's definitely memorable. I will remember. I think the scene in which the father and the housemaid first like seduce each other.
uh-huh.
That is a very memorable scene for
Yeah.
me. I think I'm like in the rain, and then again with the windows of the second floor, and you see how they go from one room to another. She's playing the piano, and then they come to her room, and she can. That's the non-PC part.
Right.
Or like non-PG part. But I thought it was done in a very elegant way, considering that probably there were censors at the time. You couldn't show them. You couldn't have that explicit material. But yeah,
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah, that's
very
good.
specific and
It's a
exciting
pretty
images.
movie. It's very well. It's beautifully filmed, and it has it has that sort of 60s Hitchcockian kind of look to the cinematography, and it's very nice.
Yeah, the
Nice to look
restoration
at.
looks great. With the caveat that there are apparently two reels that I don't know if this was also true in the version you saw. I assume you saw the same restoration that I did.
Mm-hmm.
That there's two sections in the middle of the movie where the quality of the film kind of like drops a little bit, because it has to do with the fact that some of these reels were lost and they had to be reconstructed.
Mm,
I don't know if you noticed that, but that's definitely a thing in the version available in Criterion channel.
interesting. Well, very cool. It's a good choice. I guess let's ask our questions.
Yes, time to answer the question. So our first question is, we got a little bit into this, but what do you think makes this a Criterion film?
I think that just the quality of the filmmaking and the fact that it obviously was so influential.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think it's really well made.
Mm-hmm. I would say definitely agree with you on the influential part. I think the fact that it has influenced so many directors that have been very influential themselves and very
Right.
successful. Definitely, I feel like the Korean sort of cinema that started in the late 90s and 2000s was a big deal for international cinema. There was a lot of talk about and a lot of discovery, right? Because not Korean cinema wasn't very popular outside of South Korea, and then suddenly people were talking about all these directors that were making all these crazy movies like Old Boy and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So that definitely, the fact that this feels like origin text for all those people, I think is definitely one of the reasons. And also, like you say, it's really well made, and it's also so unique in so many ways.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy, and it mixes genres, and I feel like Criterion does have a section of its releases that are very interested in things that are outside the box, right? And that like want to experiment and do like crazy stuff that you wouldn't see in most respectable movies, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. And related to the question is the next one, which is, where do you think this ranks in the pretension scale,
Yeah.
which is our famous scale of I guess it's become a 1 to 10 scale of like,
Yeah.
where do you think this ranks? So what would you say?
I mean, I think it's pretty approachable. I don't think it's that pretentious. But I mean, some people, just it being foreign film alone puts it on the scale, but that's not for me. That's not my opinion. I don't know. I'd say it's pretty low, I think, on the pretension scale. Maybe a 2 or 3.
I would say so too, because I think Hitchcock is a good comparison. I feel like when Hitchcock was making his movies, he obviously was putting a lot of work and effort into them, and he was a artistic person with a point of view that came through in all his movies. But I don't think he was sort of wanting to make this great, profound art with them, right? It was
Yeah.
kind of rediscovered and reevaluated into being that a little bit. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
feels similar for this movie, which is, I think, first and foremost, really fun, really crazy thriller. And I think Kim Ki-young, like Hitchcock, had a point of view and had specific things that he was interested in, and that's what makes it exciting. So I would
Yeah.
agree with you in the lower part of the scale, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I think that for Hitchcock, probably something like Rope is probably about as heady as he got in as far as experimental, or his is pretty. It's beautifully made, but or maybe Vertigo. Vertigo is a little
Yeah.
bit maybe on that
Yeah.
scale.
Well, they all have themes. I feel like they all have like interesting themes. It's just that I feel like the most important part was always that it was an entertaining,
Yeah,
well done, fun, exciting movie, right?
right.
And that's the energy that I see in this one too.
Yeah, I agree. That's very
Yes.
good.
All right. Well, I guess that's that. And before we go, we have to talk about what we're gonna do next time in about 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit different. It's kind of going to be a little bit of a podcast and review. Also, I will be in the thick of Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival, which I'll be attending for my 4th year in a row. And so I thought it seemed on brand to talk about the films I will have seen up to that point at Sundance. And we can just kind of, so it's going to be a little bit more of an update rather than a traditional episode. And we'll talk about if we do get to see anything, we can talk about it as far as on the channel. And just thought it would be a nice little update.
Totally. We'll talk about what Rachel's been seeing at Sundance. We'll try to talk about our favorite movies that we've seen so far during this podcast.
Yeah.
And maybe a few other things like our biggest disappointments and surprises and things like that. If you guys who are listening have questions or things that you want us to talk about, maybe you can give us a tweet or something to let us know. We will try to talk about that too when we record next.
Yeah, that would be really fun. We have our Twitter account at Criterion Pod on Twitter. And so we'd love to have you follow us there and leave your thoughts. And we'll try to put up some things about this movie when we post the episode. And let us know what you think or what you've been watching. We'd love to hear your updates. And that would be really fun at Criterion Pod.
Yes, definitely. And I guess that's it for now. And we'll see you guys next time. And I'll see you, Rachel, next time.
Yeah, Conrado, where can people find you online?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you can definitely find me through the Criterion Project Twitter, but also if you want to follow me directly on Twitter, you can do so at Coco Hits New York.
Yeah, and you can find the project all over different podcast apps. So make sure you're following us over there. If you can leave your ratings and reviews on iTunes, it definitely helps us out. We really appreciate that. And then you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and Rotten Tomatoes. So make sure you check that out. I really appreciate that. And then also I'm at the Hallmarkies podcast. So that's a lot of fun as well. So thanks so much. It's always fun. This was one of my favorite episodes, I think. This was a lot of fun to talk about this movie.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be back soon.
All right.
New year, new decade, new projects for Criterion.
Okay.
All right.
Bye everybody.
Bye.